Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? It is Bye-Mageddon Part 1. 6 teams on a bye this week. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, all guys that we've been using for fantasy purposes this season are not available to us this week. So we may need to stream a quarterback option. And today's video is going to help you figure out who we should be streaming this week and who we should just be forgetting about. And it may be difficult to utilize someone from Thursday Night Football because as of right now, it doesn't look like the weather is going to be all that great. It's disappointing that Russell Wilson had such a fantastic matchup last week against Baltimore and did very little with it. Now he's going to be going up against a Cleveland secondary that's a little bit better at stopping the pass, but he's going to be in some weather that's not going to help him have a high outcome type of day. Not only is Jameis Winston also competing against the weather, but now he's got a team allowing the third fewest fantasy points per game and the second fewest touchdowns to quarterbacks. Pittsburgh is going to get after Jameis Winston, and it would not shock me that due to the weather and the pressure, if he doesn't throw a couple of interceptions at least. Maybe the Chicago Bears will have a little extra motivation this week to actually pull this one off. The defense, they're holding up their end of the bargain for the most part, currently allowing the fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks and the fewest touchdown passes on the season. So Sam Darnold for me has about the same floor that we saw from him last week. We're looking at like 230 to 250 yards as his ceiling. Hopefully he throws a couple of touchdown passes, but if not, we're hoping for at least one and that he doesn't turn the ball over. Minnesota's defense will allow quite a few passing yards. They just don't allow a whole lot of scores and they make you turn the ball over. That's not great for Caleb Williams' ceiling this week. For Caleb Williams, he hasn't been a QB1 in the last 4 weeks. In fact, his top 24 finish last week was the highest that he's had in the last 4 weeks as well. Right now, he's not playing great football. The offense as a whole is not functioning well. Is he going to get the ball to his wide receivers this week? Yeah, he'll probably pick up a decent amount of yards. But if he doesn't throw a touchdown pass and he throws interceptions, it's going to kill his value. The Colts defense is currently allowing the 5th most passing yards and 10th most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. And Jared Goff is coming off the QB1 finish last week. In fact, it almost felt like last week was a little personal for the Detroit Lions. Almost like they wanted to show everybody, hey, our offense is still rolling. It doesn't matter how close the game was in Houston, and it certainly doesn't matter Jared Goff's performance in Houston. It's almost like they want to get him back in that MVP conversation. So don't be shocked if he does the same thing this week against a very poor Indianapolis secondary. In fact, over on Underdog, his current projection is set at 248.5 passing yards. And I'm going to go higher than that in all of my Underdog lineups. I feel really good about Jared Goff once again this week, going up against a poor secondary for the Indianapolis Colts, and the Lions again just trying to throw their strength around and be the better team by a mile. But I'm not feeling nearly as confident about Anthony Richardson right now. Huge game last week against the Jets. It was great to see him bounce back after that benching debacle that his coaching staff screwed up. But this matchup against Detroit, personally to me, feels a lot worse than what they had last week. There's 2 reasons why. Number 1, it's the turnover potential. The Lions have created the 2nd most interceptions so far on the season, and they allow the fewest passing touchdowns. That is a big issue. Number 2, getting into the red zone. Because if Anthony Richardson is continuously in the red zone, he's going to have opportunities to score on the ground. But if Detroit's defense is causing turnovers and keeping them from getting that close to the red zone, then that's where you have a lot of issues with Anthony Richardson turning in any type of fantasy valuable performance. That's why this week, and I hate to do this, I'm going to go with Anthony Richardson as my Mando must avoid at the quarterback position. He's got some decent upside. He always does when he's on the football field. But this matchup against the Lions, where they could force the Colts into becoming one-dimensional because their offense will will put it on them quick and early makes me feel like there's just too many opportunities for Anthony Richardson to potentially turn the ball over and have a bad game. So you know what? If you're going to be sweating this out because you need to play Anthony Richardson, then head on over to Shop Mando and get one of their starter packs for $5 off using code word headliners. That's almost 40% off the entire price. Their starter pack comes with a lot of great options, and their clinically proven formula can eliminate odors for up to 72 hours. You don't even need it for that long, just a couple of hours to watch the Lions dominate the Colts. Drake Maye has been playing really well since taking over as the starter for the New England Patriots. 2 top 12 finishes, 3 top 24 finishes, and he's been a really solid contributor as a QB2 in 2 quarterback and Superflex leagues. More than likely, you probably haven't been utilizing him a whole lot in 1 QB leagues except for a couple of times here or there. But this matchup against Miami could end up being way more difficult because Miami is currently allowing the 7th fewest passing yards, 4th fewest passing touchdowns, and 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. So this week for Drake Maye, the ceiling may not be exactly what we would like. Tua has actually been a pretty steady quarterback too since returning from his concussion, and he finally had a QB1 finish last week. New England allows quite a few passing yards. You don't really punch it into the end zone with your quarterback as much as you would like against New England, but you can drive the field on them with the quarterback position. So Tua this week over on Underdog has a current projection set at 242.5 passing yards. And I feel like this offense is starting to kind of heat up again a little bit. Jonnu Smith is playing well. Tyreek Hill has touchdowns in back-to-back games. The running game is working well. So I really feel like they have a great opportunity to stay balanced this week. And it probably will end up being a decently close game for the most part. And hopefully Tua can go over his 242.5 line that is currently set. The New York Giants defense seems to give up a lot of fantasy points to the quarterback position, but a lot of that is attributed to the fact that they give up a lot of rush yards and rushing touchdowns. In fact, their pass defense has been pretty solid so far this season. Now, Baker Mayfield can move a little bit, and he could score a touchdown on the ground, absolutely. But if we're looking for a high upside play, he may have difficulty finding that this week. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that Mike Evans comes back, though, because if he does, it does leave Baker Mayfield as a pretty significant low-risk play for me this week. Now, that could change if there's no Mike Evans, and if that happens, he might move a little bit closer to being a medium risk, but still somebody that will start. I'm going to say it. I don't hate Tommy DeVito. If you're looking for someone to play this week, if you have somebody on a bye and you need a streaming option, I'm okay with going with Tommy D. He showed some decent things last year. In particular, it was up against teams that had bad defenses. Well, guess what? Now he's going up against a Tampa Bay defense that isn't that good. There's worse options out there. Absolutely. Toss it up to Neighbors. Toss it up to Wan'Dale Robinson. Let them do work after the play. Tommy DeVito may actually be a top 24 quarterback with like some high QB2 upside. Outside of one big play from Cooper Rush, a majority of the day against Houston was one big struggle. And with as good as the Washington defense continues to get every single week, trying to run out Cooper Rush doesn't feel like a good idea, even with all the bye weeks happening right now. He's got CeeDee Lamb, but the run game is only so-so. This week is a real good matchup, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try to lean on that a little bit more. Jayden Daniels, back-to-back weeks is the QB 24. He kind of lost his upside a little bit, but Dallas this week is a good opportunity for him to kind of get rolling once again. It's not the worst matchup in the world. It's not the best matchup in the world, but it is definitely one where I could see him getting back inside the top 12 and help our fantasy teams the way he was doing towards the beginning of the year. Trying to face Patrick Mahomes the week after he loses to the Buffalo Bills is probably not the best area for Carolina to find themselves in coming up in week 12. Their defense, I don't think, is going to be able to handle the onslaught that's going to come from the Kansas City Chiefs offense as they look to get back on track and finish the rest of the season strong. Patrick Mahomes is a really strong start for me this week. Since Andy Dalton got hurt and Bryce Young regained his starter role, he's given us a couple of top 24 performances. Nothing to write home about, nothing super exorbitant, but it's good to see it from him, at least that he's progressing and getting better, especially considering the team around him isn't all that good anyway. This matchup is a little too difficult for me to be banking on him. The only format you're looking at Bryce Young might be a 2-quarterback league, but even at that point, you might want to grab somebody else if you can. The Houston defense may be tied for allowing the 3rd fewest passing yards on the season, but they're also tied allowing the 2nd most passing touchdowns on the season. Will Levis is all about the big play, all about the big touchdown. If he can hit 1 or maybe even 2 of those, then yeah, really fantasy viable with top 12 upside. But if he can't hit those big plays, we're talking about a guy that may not even finish as the quarterback 24. CJ Stroud has not looked like himself for a few weeks now. Losing Nico Collins didn't help. Losing Stephon Diggs didn't help. And getting hit and pressured more than most quarterbacks in the league right now also is not helping. This Tennessee secondary is still pretty good. Don't let their record fool you. They're not all that bad on defense. So for CJ Stroud, it's about limiting turnovers, taking the plays that come to you, getting the ball out quickly, and just being as efficient as possible. The last time Las Vegas and Denver got together, Bo Nix was the quarterback 8. And those are the laws of average this season for Bo Nix. Yeah, he has struggled at times going up against tougher defenses, but when he's played easy defenses, he's typically showed out for our fantasy teams. So this matchup should also present some really nice ceiling. Minshew was pretty solid last week, but if we're talking about needing to start him in 1-quarterback leagues, we're talking about needing at least 280 yards, because if you're not getting that, you're not getting a touchdown or multiple touchdowns, and you're expecting Gardner Minshew not to struggle and potentially have an interception against one of the NFL's best pass defenses, I think you're being unrealistic with what you can and can't get from him. Brock Purdy's had a really steady floor all season long, and over his last 5 games, he's been a quarterback 1 every single game, so he's showing some of that ceiling as well. Not having George Kittle isn't the best outcome in the world. This week, he should have another decent floor, but with George Kittle back, he's got quarterback 1 potential once again. Jordan Love had his first QB1 performance last week since week 7, so he unfortunately has not been able to find the ceiling all that much, and dealing with that injury earlier in the year probably didn't help as well. Now going up against a tough San Francisco defense, I kind of expect some of that same ceiling and floor that we've seen over the last several weeks. More than likely, he's going to find himself as a borderline quarterback 1. Kyler Murray's floor this week is probably somewhere between QB 10 and QB 14. I'm not really loving the upside going up against the Seattle secondary. That can cause problems at times. It can also get absolutely thrashed at times as well. But the disconnect between Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't help. He needs to start getting the ball a lot more regularly to his number 1 wide receiver. If Kyler Murray can add some rushing yards and maybe even a rushing touchdown, then he definitely is going to find himself inside the top 12. But if he can't do that, he may just end up being outside of that. Geno Smith's numbers have basically been the same all season long. He's got a floor of a quarterback 2. He throws the ball more than enough to be in that area. He just hasn't been able to find much of a ceiling throughout the season. So if you're looking at him as being your quarterback 1, more times than not, he's probably going to be just below that. But he's got some low-end QB1 potential, and that holds true in this matchup as well. There's not too many quarterbacks playing as well as Jalen Hurts right now. He had 4 straight top 5 quarterback finishes heading into last week. And this week in this matchup against the Rams, I definitely expect to find him back towards that top 5 once again. If not, competing for the number 1 QB spot. This Philadelphia defense is inside the top 4 fewest fantasy points per game allowed, fewest touchdowns, and fewest passing yards allowed to quarterbacks. But typically, that doesn't matter with Matthew Stafford. It wouldn't shock me if he threw the ball 50 times this game. Volume is king when it comes to Stafford, and typically, more volume equals a much safer floor. Maybe the ceiling won't be there, though. Lamar Jackson versus Justin Herbert on Monday Night Football is going to be a banger of a matchup with a lot of really good plays to keep us all excited. Last week was the first week all season Lamar Jackson did not finish as a top 12 quarterback. Can he get back into the top 12, or will this Chargers defense step up and keep him outside once again? it doesn't matter what you think. You're still starting him in your lineups and you're expecting a top 6 performance. Justin Herbert very quietly has 4 straight games as a top 12 quarterback. And now he gets a Baltimore team that is allowing the most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks and 3rd most fantasy points per game. Justin Herbert has top 12 potential all over him again this week. And over on Underdog, his projection right now sits at 249.5 passing yards. Going up against Baltimore, who should keep this game close, Justin Herbert could well exceed that number. There you go, Headliner Nation. I've dove into all the quarterbacks, tight ends, wide receivers, and running backs for you this week and our start and sit shows. And hopefully your lineup is looking a little bit more clear to you now. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here though. Enjoy the rankings for the rest of the week. And don't forget, I'll be here Saturday night and Sunday morning for our live shows. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that like button on the way out. Turn on the bell notifications. Anytime we drop new content or go live, you'll get a noti right away. For now, peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.